Welcome to Basic Brewing Video. I'm James Spencer.
I'm Steve Wilkes.
Be ready to take notes. This is a long brewing process. Or you could subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/basicbrewing and you get the recipe. So there you go. You don't need to take notes. Shameless plug. So I drew in our Mash Your Luck Challenge on Basic Brewing Radio. I spun the wheel and I got the characteristics of very high alcohol, low bitterness, dark, lager from the world, which is kind of like it's like a catch-all category for not UK, US, Germany, or Belgium.
Okay. Is that like world lager? You know, because you see that sometimes.
I don't know what it means. It means somewhere in the world that we didn't cover with the other categories that we.
Yeah.
So for the world part, I picked south of the border because I thought a dark beer, big dark beer, would go well with certain flavors like piloncillo sugar, which is like a raw dark sugar. You know.
So this is south of the border down Mexico way.
Don't sing. We have royalty issues. No, piloncillo sugar. You're familiar with it. It comes in the little cones.
Yeah.
American dark sugar or brown sugar is refined, and then they add molasses back in.
Right.
The piloncillo is more of kind of pure dark sugar. You know, they cook the sugar. They squeeze the sugar cane, as I understand it. They squeeze the sugar cane. I've never seen it done. They cook the sugar. They pour it into cones, and it dries, and there you have this sugar. So it's got piloncillo sugar. Mm-hmm. It's got Honduran coffee that I roasted myself. It's got tincture of cacao nibs, and it's got a little teeny bit of a tincture that I made with my hickory smoked habanero powder.
Which I'm putting in almost everything I cook now.
I know, isn't it good?
And you just need a pinch. I mean, like literally that much.
A little dab will do you.
And
it's like Brill cream. Wasn't it Brill cream?
Yeah. Yeah.
I said dippity-doo the other day. That's not right.
No.
Okay. Now, to formulate this recipe, I got on a show with Chris Colby, author of the Homebrew Recipe Bible, Methods of Modern Homebrewing, and How to Make Hard Seltzer. It's like this show is nothing but credits. And we discussed strategies of how to make this giant base beer. Now, in the previous show, if you subscribe to our feed, and I hope you do, you saw us drink the delicious Starter Pilsner, which is this nice, simple little lager that I made with Imperial L17 Harvest. On the day that I brewed this big beer, I racked this beer off into the keg, and I used the yeast slurry from this beer for this beer. So this is a huge starter, a 5-gallon starter for this beer. Okay. Buckle up.
Okay.
We're going to use a technique that Chris Colby calls reiterated mashing. So when you're making a big beer, if I were to put 20 pounds of grain all at once into my system, it would kind of get bogged down because that's a lot of grain for the recirculated wort to go through. Mm-hmm. What you do with a reiterated mash is you do a smaller mash and you make a wort. Then you use that wort for a second mash with the other half of your grain. So you can run your system more efficiently. Now, in the past, when Chris and I very first talked about this, we talked about using a traditional mash tun system, and it just sounded like a pain in the butt. With brew in a bag, it's easy because you do the first mash. You take out the grain bag, you get rid of that grain.
Right.
You put the grain bag back in, you put into the bag that's into the wort, you put more grain. So it's easy. It takes more time, but it's pretty easy. Okay, so all that's set up to walk you through the process, because it's a little tricky to get your mind around if you hadn't thought about it before. So this is I wound up a 3.5 gallons in the bottling bucket at the end of the process. So between boiling for an extra long time and all the grain I used, I lost some stuff along the way. Anyway, here we go. For the first mash, I put in 9 gallons or 34 liters of water at 157 degrees Fahrenheit or 69 C. I put 10 pounds or 4.5 kilograms of American two-row. I mashed for an hour and 15 minutes at 150 C or 150 Fahrenheit, 65 C. I took that grain out, and the wort that was remaining was at around 1030, 1.030. Then I added to that wort in the bag 10 pounds or 4.5 kilograms of American two-row, 12 ounces or 340 grams of chocolate malt, 3 ounces or 85 grams of black malt. So that's the malt bill. I mashed that again at 150 degrees Fahrenheit for, I think, an hour and a half that time. I got these cones of piloncillo sugar, and I was afraid they felt pretty tough to me, so I didn't know what to do with them. So I put them into a Ziploc bag, and I whacked them with a mallet, and they came right apart.
Did you kill them?
It looked like it. Nothing could survive that. So I whacked the cones until it all became powder.
Is this like whack-a-mole?
Ding ding. So then once I put that into the kettle, it dissolved very completely, almost immediately. It's just like, boom. So I at the beginning of my boil, I added 2 ounces or 56 grams of German Northern Brewer, and I added that at 6.9% alpha acid, and I added that for the full boil. Turns out I boiled for 1.5 hours, so 1.5 hours, and I kept looking at the refractometer to check my gravity. So my original gravity was, I was shooting for 1.120, it turned out to be 1.112. So I chilled that down to 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 C. I racked that onto the yeast cake from the Pilsner. I oxygenated it, and then I put it in the kegerator, and boom, boy, that sucker took off. So once the primary fermentation had slowed down, I took it out of the kegerator for a diacetyl rest. I racked it to a secondary, and then at bottling day, my wife Susan and I, we blended to taste. So we tasted the base beer, then we added these ingredients to kind of balance and taste the beer and see what we liked. We wound up adding about a cup of brewed coffee, the brewed Honduran coffee, a cup of cacao nib tincture. So I made a tincture with vodka, about a cup of that, and 2 teaspoons of the habanero powder tincture.
I was gonna say,
just a little bit.
okay.
So then we mixed that all together. We liked it, and so once we liked it, I added a slurry of the Lallemand cask and bottle conditioning yeast, just to give the yeast an extra push going into the bottle. So original gravity 1.112, final gravity 1012, 1.012, for an ABV of around 13.3%.
This is like a honeycomb beer.
So I yielded 35 bottles in the end of it. So I need to blow my nose after all that instruction. So we've been talking a long time for the process, but here, let's see. Hit it. Go ahead and hit it. Let's see if we can hear it. Okay. There's a little bit of hiss.
Yeah.
Now pour aggressively. It's not very carbonated. Here we go. Okay, save some for yourself.
Oh, well, you know, one shot of this is, I call this, well, it's got a nice little
Cheers.
pub level of carbonation, I think.
So the official name for this, I think, was La Cerveza Oscura del Mundo, which I think is the dark beer of the world.
Well, that's really good. That's a big drink of water.
I'm going to let you process the.
There's so many levels of stuff going on.
And we've let this sit out for a while so we can taste it.
It's not a stout.
No,
I mean, that's the first thing. I mean, no, it's not. It's definitely not a stout. It's definitely not a porter. It's giant. I'm very warmed. The chocolate is really nice, and it kind of finishes kind of like a brownie. You know, it's kind of got that
with the malt in
the
there.
malt and there's a little bit of a bitterness in it. I don't know if that's from the hops or I don't know where it's coming from.
Maybe it's the coffee.
Might be okay. That was the next place I was going. Was I'm getting the coffee. I get the chocolate more than anything, and then I get just a hint of heat.
Yeah.
I mean, and I mean just a hint.
That's what we're shooting for.
It's perfect. If there was any hotter or more habanero-y, you'd call it. It'd be a chili beer.
It'd be distracting.
It'd be distracting. It's not distracting. Yeah, that's good. Good, because it's not a chili beer, but there is that little bit of heat, and I can tell that it's coming from a chili of some kind. I can't really say that it's coming from habanero,
Right.
but I can say that it's got a little heat that really balances and kind of finishes the beer out. Another thing that the heat does, that just that tiny bit of spice, is that it does kind of put a little savory end to an otherwise perhaps cloying beer. And
We'll get back to you.
yeah, marketing. And so that's a nice technique, I think, to add to a beer like this.
Now, do you think you said cloying. To me, finishing out at 10-12, I don't think it's like some of the beers that we've had, some of the giant beers that we've had and liked,
Right.
or like drinking motor oil because it's
Right.
like, oh, this is like a milkshake. To me, it is a little sweet, but to me, it's not that cloying level of I just want a couple of sips of this and nothing else.
Right.
I could drink
Oh yeah, yeah.
a serving of this in a hurry.
Well, and again, I said could be cloying. I don't think this beer is cloying, but I think that's a danger. It's a pitfall that you can fall into when trying to make beers in the 11 to 12, 13% range. If you're not careful, they'll be under attenuated, overly sweet, and you're not really quite sure what you did wrong.
I'm getting that brown sugar now.
I get there's a brown sugar. It's like a little, like the crispy part of a brownie. The malt, the hops are just right. It's a really nicely balanced beer. Again, my predominant flavor is chocolate.
I think that the harvest, especially that big old volume of the yeast, did a great job at getting all the way up to 13% alcohol. There's no fermentation flaws that I can detect. This is almost room temperature by now. There's no butteriness. There's no slickness, or there's no butterscotchiness from the fermentation. To me, it's clean as a whistle.
Yep.
I mean, there is some. It does stick to the tongue a bit at the end of it, but it's not, like I say, it's not gloppy. I wouldn't call it gloppy, but it is.
It's just a big,
it
complex
is
beer.
Substantial.
Yeah, it's a. I'm getting a little lightheaded. I gotta tell you, I'm kind of like, ooh.
We can sit down. It's the last show of the day. We can sit down.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. It's like, it still kind of scratches the itch of one of those, like a 1050. It kind of fills that space, but it's nowhere near as heavy as those giant Russian Imperial Stouts and those kinds of things. It's nowhere near like that, and yet, that's a big beer.
Well, I think kudos and thanks to Chris Colby for helping me formulate this beer. And kudos to our friends at Imperial Yeast for putting out an excellent product that did the fermentation so well. I just got a bunch of these left, and I think we'll save them. This will be a beer that'd be nice to revisit next year.
It will actually. I was thinking this would be interesting to put up side by side. We should maybe hold a couple back to do this. I think it'd be real interesting to put this up against that Bochet dark beer I made.
Oh yeah.
Which is similar, meaning they're both about 12%. Yours is a little stronger. Mine's, I think yours is 13. I brew at
lucky-
12% beer, and it's still not the biggest.
My lucky number.
And they both kind of fill that same space in your palate. It would be real interesting to compare the two around the first of the year.
Yeah.
Because then they'll have some age, and they're giant beers, so they'll have a little time on them, which I think helps a beer like this.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. And it's another show.
Well, I think this is the last show of the year. I think I'm posting this after Christmas, so I hope everybody had a good holiday, and I hope that you have a wonderful new year. And try fun stuff.
Yeah.
This is nothing but fun.
Yep.
So, and share it, especially big beers. Share it with your friends.
This is nice and clear. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's dark, but
Yeah.
you can see through it very easily,
Yeah.
which is nice because it means it's settled out.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Come and visit us online at basicbrewing.com. You can find archive lists of our audio and video podcasts on homebrewing. You can also find our DVDs and our brewer's logbook, where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer.
Do I need to gird my loins?
Don't know. I don't know what that means.
Well, it's a big beer. You might have to gird your loins before you.
You just tighten your truss.
Okay.